playing a Sonic game or any other game really, have you ever stumbled across a rather obscure or inconspicuous place and thought it had something special? A sort of feeling you couldn't explain, it just kinda felt cozy, interesting or nice to be there. Well, I know I have, and I also know a lot of people who have as well. So, today, we're gonna be taking a look at some obscure or unusual areas in Sonic games that I think are pretty interesting or notable. These can be just normal places, rooms or details, as well as out-of-bounds stuff and hidden areas for example. I asked that exact question in my community tab and on my Twitter, so I want to thank everyone who participated in this little group activity because I don't think I could remember or even notice most of these myself. I also recommend checking out the Obscure and Unusual Area series by Pretzel, as that's where I got the video and title idea from, more specifically from his Half-Life video. So yeah, if that interests you in any way, make sure to check it out. Unlike most of my other videos, where I like to keep stuff very organized, here we are just gonna take a look at these spots by whatever order the flow of the script leads me to, so it should make things a bit more interesting. One of the spots I referenced as an example on my post was this seemingly unimportant area in Grand Metropolis from Heroes. This is the small room that contains the invincibility box in the beginning of the final part of the stage, and I remember spending so much time there as a kid. I don't really know why. Maybe the interior decoration intrigued me. I still love this older design style, with geometric patterns on the floor as well as intricate details on the wallpaper, mixed with the refined design of the windows. That's probably what did it for me as a kid. It just felt and still feels cozy in a way I can't explain. Heroes actually has a ton of these for me, as that's the game I played the most when I was younger. It was suggested to me this place in Grand Metropolis as well, being a few seconds away from that room. This was also one of the places I spent the most time. This place is especially weird because there literally isn't anything here. There are some holographic displays and a switch that activates a pole just so you can leave. I guess the devs knew people would want to go there, but yeah, it feels oddly familiar. And the view from here is pretty nice too. Another spot in Heroes is the inside of the stone platforms in Ocean Palace. After the first fan of the level, there is a stone platform you need to climb. However, there are two small gaps in it that, if you spin dash, will make you go inside the rock. I really like this spot, it's cozy and hidden, having a small view to the waterfalls on both sides. It's nice. I distinctly remember you could actually stand on a platform inside the gaps without falling, but I can't seem to replicate it in the GameCube version. I played the OG Xbox version as a kid, and I even tried on my OG Xbox to replicate this distant memory, but Sonic just seems to fall much like any other version, though I know it wasn't a dream, I know it really happened. Casino Park features something I think I'll never be able to forget, which is the background image. I remember being so fascinated by it, thinking there was a whole ass city down there to explore, but you couldn't go there for some reason. That giant roulette and those unusual casino-themed buildings were so captivating that I was really sad once I realized that it was just an image. I love the aesthetic of images like that. The city lights are always so beautiful in my opinion, and I guess the first photoshopped image you see is the one you'll never forget. Similarly, the background of Frog Forest was really interesting to me. The giant dense jungle with big pink mushrooms felt so mystical. Well, a lot of the heroes' backgrounds are like that honestly, just massive areas that seemingly have no end in sight, which work really well with the settings of the levels. On the same note, I also really like the bottom scenery of Power Plant and Grand Metropolis. The mixture of nature and industrial/futuristic designs, it felt so familiar as it felt distant, which triggers that feeling of wanting to explore this unknown location. The bobsled section of Seaside Hill also features two areas I enjoyed dearly for some reason. The first being this rock platform up here that you can only access after completing the segment and then walking all the way back. I think there is even a crab here in the chaotic stage. The second one is this little island that has absolutely nothing normally, though I also think there is another crab here, which would explain why this random little island even has collision. The other image I used as an example was this gym in Modern Speed Highway from Generations. I found out about this one when making the architecture video, which is really intriguing to me because you can really only see this room in the stage for less than a second, and for the duration that you can actually see it, you won't really be looking at it. This stage features a lot of these examples for some odd reason. Have you ever noticed these flat entrances, or the paintings, or this lobby, or this big fully modeled cafe, or this office building with unique and intricate interior designs? On the topic of Speed Highway, have you ever stopped to appreciate its entrance? When the stage starts, you usually immediately boost off and don't really take a look at your surroundings. The walls seem to have a bunch of electrical panels and switchboards for seemingly no reason, other than to add noise and detail, which works considering that you never really get to take a good look at this place. Also, did you know that this corridor actually goes quite further back? Beyond the metal boxes, the path seems to actually descend and bend a little bit, probably suggesting that the stage would start in the same way as modern chemical plant. Speaking of chemical plant, some people express their feelings per se about the buildings you can stand on. There are the storage tanks that let you access other areas of the stage, of course, but there are also these that have nothing in them apart from collision. Sonic is pretty small compared to them, even this seemingly small ledge from afar is the same size as him, which is odd but also cool in a way, because it means that you're not really supposed to be here normally. Looking at the stage from the ground up also emphasizes that size difference. What's also cool here is how the ground uses road textures with crosswalks, even though there is nothing in these streets besides big metal buildings and huge storage tanks that sometimes even block the roads. Rooftop Run is also a great model for these sorts of places, both in Generations and Unleashed, as suggested by some people. For example, there are shops, which interior is mostly composed of low-res textures. At first, I went into one of them and thought they were actually arranged in a 3D sort of scenario, but then the immersion breaks pretty quickly. There are also a few stands and tables full of food and whatnot. Who had the time to decorate all of these? Another interesting place is this library, being a lot more detailed than it should, considering the time that you actually spend inside it. I really dig this elegant aesthetic, it's very warm and inviting. Coming out of it and turning left presents a few rings that you can barely see when playing normally, which seem to be lined up with the pathway. There are also different camera angles here, probably suggesting that an alternate path may have led here at some point. Same deal as with the library here. This seemingly larger than it should be hallway has a quaint room that you barely get to see. This balcony also seems rather cozy and pleasant, though maybe a bit too dark. I also don't really know how you'd get here. This stage also features a bunch of details that you won't even get to see because of how the camera is. First and foremost, at the beginning of the stage, there is a small plaza that you'll never be able to see because you're immediately launched forwards. And even if you turn back, the camera will face the opposite way, so this is always hidden. One of the buildings also has a big hollow room. This is the case for multiple buildings around this area, for some reason. Here is also a random path out of bounds that has collision up to a point, but seemingly leads nowhere, probably being a remnant of an older alternate route. Another interesting thing you can never see is this weird-ass texture behind the street where the unkillable Badnik is. Well, you can just barely see it from here, but even then, what is it even doing there? Since we're talking about an Unleashed stage, let's take a look at some unusual areas there, considering that this game has a bunch of interesting ones. One that I always appreciated is the place where the animals are in Savannah Citadel, both in the stage and in the hub world. They just look so happy and peaceful, they're incredible. Aporos has a ton of these examples for me. Most people when playing Unleashed don't really give the hub worlds the attention they deserve, but exploring them will reveal a bunch of cozy, welcoming and charming areas for you to enjoy. I bet you never even noticed this guy watering his plants. I even bet you never noticed he's actually inside the plants themselves. Furthermore, I bet you didn't notice those two guys fishing. The entrances of the houses are my favorite part of this hub world. They look so quaint and relaxed, living there is probably quite nice. Some people also mentioned the shops in Windmill Isle, which I actually never paid much attention to. You can see the menu of some restaurants, hotels, seagulls you can scare, level geometry popping in, beautiful restaurants under shade provided by leaves and flowers, it has it all. One of the restaurants has a secret fisherman dish in the menu, which is a bit scary. You can actually explore quite a lot more than I expected. I thought that a lot of these places would be blocked off by invisible walls, since you don't really need to go there. But no, it's pretty open, though a lot of the scenery is indeed blocked off, which is a shame but is understandable of course. Speaking of restaurants, some people mentioned the restaurants in Aquarium Park from Colors. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really find any restaurants, but I found these panels with a kraken and a dragon, which look amazing and I never even noticed they were there. There are also some that depict waves and a cloudy sky. Planet Wisp's meadows are also a favorite of mine. You usually run past these without giving much thought to them. You might think they look good, but you probably haven't appreciated them enough. The alien though Earth-like vegetation, rock formations and trees give it a mystical and contrasting familiar appearance, thus creating a beautiful and interesting landscape. I dare you to say that you wouldn't love to visit this place, minus the industrial part. Sonic and the Black Knight's meadows and plains are also a favorite of mine. They just feel so peaceful and mystical, especially when mixed with the ruins of old medieval architecture. It's just so meticulously crafted to elevate your experience to unprecedented heights. Went on a bit of a tangent there. Spagonia's shops are actually more than 2D textures. Well, like 50% of them are still composed of 2D textures, but some do have 3D models inside, such as food or wooden toys, as well as modeled barbers and flower shops. The balconies you can get on are a favorite of mine. I really like these emptier spots for some reason, though I like this alleyway specifically. It being narrow makes it quite welcoming, which is aided a lot by the lighting, allowing you to get on top of the Rooftop Cafe as well, which is another cool place you don't usually go to. Spagonia also features one of the areas that immediately came to my mind when I thought of making this video, which is the Professor's Library. As I've mentioned, I really like this older elegant style, with intricate decorations and relaxing lighting. It's very welcoming. Also, shout out to some of the locations made specifically for medals, which are usually pretty hard to find and in rather obscure places. On the topic of shops and cities and whatnot, Station Square, or SA1 in its entirety rather, is one of those areas that is abundant in weird or interesting places, of which its shops are included. Take the newsstand as an example. How does the woman even get there? Does she have to jump over the stand? I don't think any of the newspapers feature any real words either. Same deal with the receptionist. How does he get there? What do you reckon is being sold in this shop? Books and cakes? The burger shop is one of the few shops you can actually enter, which is quite nice and oddly detailed. Even though it's a burger shop, it has a ton of pizzas in the oven. The other shop you can enter looks like an antique shop, having a few interesting items, like robots and what appears to be a set of toy trains. Another place that people mentioned quite a lot more than I anticipated, because I thought I was the only one who had memories of this place, is the room where you can get a crystal ring in the hotel. I remember spending so much time trying to get here, and when I finally did it, I just sit here for a while for no reason. Two other spots like this, which no one actually mentioned, are related to the sewers. The first being the one in the main area, where you can get a power-up for Tails, I think. This place is really weird, it feels oddly rustic and there is nothing here, nor is there even a way to conventionally get here, so I have no idea why anyone would build this. Also, I remember being pretty sad that you couldn't go further down the sewers to explore, but when you get older, you get access to free cam and the magic fades away pretty quickly. The second place is the area where you pick up the Lightspeed shoes for Sonic, which features some weird machinery here for some reason. Actually, though you can't really explore it as Sonic, and I don't really remember if there is a character that can, behind this box this area is weirdly large, though pretty empty. But it's quite interesting, considering that I don't think I even knew about its existence. The Egg Carrier also features a bunch of these spots for me. I would go as far to say that every area in it gives that weird feeling from usually unexplored or obscure places. There are a few rooms that stand out though, such as the Arsenal room, the pool, and infamously, Eggman's personal quarters. It looks fucking hideous, with its blinding color pattern on the floor, having a weird game room and a bedroom where the bed comes off of the wall with a switch, having weird spinning globes and a fridge. There is a very very specific spot at the start of Emerald Coast, which is probably the main reason I thought of making this video in the first place. If you look at the windows on the higher part of the hotel, you'll see that they are just plain textures with seemingly nothing behind them. However, if you look inside the bottom windows, you'll see that they actually have stuff inside, even if it's the same for every window, being an incredibly low resolution texture. Incredible. The walls appear to feature a painting, an air vent apparently, and a violin. It's actually pretty amusing how it's the exact same texture for all sides of the wall, even being stretched for the longer wall. Now for stages, other area people mentioned a lot, which I was kind of expecting, are the showers in Casinopolis, and I think a lot of people can get behind this one. They have that cozy, clean and elegant hotel vibe that simply works, so it's no wonder they are so prominent. The jail cells in Red Mountain were also mentioned, which I also noted down when grabbing info for the video. I remember them being really scary when I was younger, especially with those weird looking ghosts, but nowadays it feels charming in a way. Not the fact that they are locked up, I mean the area surrounding them. Most of Big's levels have extra fishing spots which are really neat and great fun to explore, with my favorite one being the underwater cave in Emerald Coast. It just feels really peaceful. Speaking of Big, have you ever paid attention to Big's cameos in SA2? But when I ask if you paid attention, have you really paid attention? Like, how does he even get himself in some of these situations? He also likes to fish in sand, in space and in electric water for some reason. Secret Rings also has a bunch of big cameos, with most of them being in really fucking weird locations and situations, as you would expect. Like, how the fuck is he swimming in the air? Night Palaces has to be my favorite one by far though. He just starts breakdancing out of nowhere. These spottings also fill your Big's travel journal, which is pretty amusing, where you can see photos of Big fishing in lava or in the middle of the air. I guess tradition never dies. Back to SA2, I also really like this spot in Meteor Herd, for no reason specifically. Did you know that there is a pretty obscure room in Eternal Engine that houses a Chao in the third mission? Well, maybe you did. But did you know that you can also access it in normal play? The Chao will be replaced with a life, and you can't really get out of here because of the lasers, as the stage doesn't end like in the Chao mission. So you're only going here to get alive, and then die. I couldn't talk about the adventure games without mentioning the Chao Gardens. These are as close as Sonic will ever get to a liminal space or anything like that. They feel so dreamlike, surreal and peaceful in a way I can't really explain. Spending so much time in these would inevitably create a special feeling towards them. The music helps a ton in creating a relaxing and welcoming atmosphere as well, so I'm surprised no one really mentioned them. Also, you can visit the Sky Road Mystic Melody spot as Knuckles in Pumpkin Hill, which is pretty interesting. Speaking of which, it's very neat how in Cyberspace 2.6 in Frontiers, you can go to this original Mystic Melody spot, as the stage is inspired by Skyrail's layout. It doesn't do anything really, but it's a cool reference. Also, and I wasn't expecting this, like at all, a lot of people seem to really enjoy Raya Island. I didn't really get why, but after exploring it for a bit, I do kind of understand now. This is the island that you spend the last time on in the game, so it does kinda classify as a rather obscure place. Not that it matters much for the video anyways. Even though it looks the same as Kronos Island, you'd be mistaken to think it's more of the same. It's more densely forested, that is for sure, but its abundant groves, lakes and waterfalls, paired with the ancient ruins, create a serene and honestly just plain beautiful atmosphere that is close to unbeatable in the franchise, especially when you consider that you won't spend more than 20 minutes here in your playthrough, and are solely aiming to climb the towers. This spot specifically has ought to be one of my favorites in the franchise. Some people also mentioned the submerged ruins, which are a cool detail. Well, to be honest, the entirety of Frontiers' islands could count. There are a bunch of obscure little segments, islands, hills, whatever, that I'm sure a lot of you will have a special memory of. But going back to cities, Soliana also has a lot of cool unusual areas. Soliana Castletown has a few for me, specifically in the balconies, much like in Spagonia, since you don't come to these places very often. The area surrounding this fountain is very pleasant as well. The new city itself has a bunch of these, which is hugely aided by the empty grey atmosphere, accompanied by the huge buildings that have absolutely no one living in them. The NPCs walking around don't help as well, there are too few for the size of of this town. So Liana Forest in its entirety is pretty strange and transmits that sort of vibe too, being really big and open but completely empty. I like this little island on the lake though. You can actually go to the Kingdom Valley area of this hub since it has collision for some reason. It feels really weird considering that it lacks a bunch of geometry and objects and doesn't have the same atmosphere as the stage does. It feels very unfinished. Similarly, the open, empty areas of Dusty Desert and White Acropolis were always pretty weird to me, since they compose a considerable part of the stage and you won't even go there most of the time. It definitely feels like something is missing here. Someone also mentioned the houses in Wave Ocean, which I can get behind, you don't really get to see them much, considering that they are usually background elements or they are next to you in scripted sequences, so you can't really appreciate them enough. They have that beach, seaside, relaxed architecture that you would expect from such places. They are very nice. On the same note, and I was really happy that someone actually mentioned it, the little port in Sonic Rush Adventure where you can go ride your water bike and talk to a koala is one of those spots that is very important in the game but also feels really personal and cozy. I have so many memories of this place, it just makes me happy, and I'm glad I wasn't the only one who felt that way. Speaking of cities, the shops for Ghost Town in Forces were mentioned. You can't really see anything inside them, but they are pretty interesting and oddly detailed, considering that you don't really see anyone speaking about the city stages from this game. There are a bunch of cool and interesting features that expose some of the love put into this game, though it wasn't really spent in the best ways possible. Now that I mentioned that, I remembered Metropolitan Highway, which is one of the best stages conceptually in the franchise in my opinion. It has a lot of futuristic and never-before-seen designs, with weird and innovative decorations and detailing. It really makes me want to explore this unknown city, much like Grand Metropolis. On the topic of exploring, some people mentioned the multiple quote-unquote useless paths in Mortar Canyon, which is actually a great suggestion now that I think about it. There is a surprising amount of them that you probably didn't even know existed, because they are much slower than the route people normally take, which is literally just flying through the stage. Some don't really seem to serve much purpose other than just existing, but they are fun to explore. Mostly. So, after all these spots I've covered, I do have a favorite. You might be asking yourself what spot from the rich and diverse environments and areas and everything that we have seen could potentially top all the others. Well, it's the very popular shower room in SA1. It's iconic, it's weirdly cozy, I love the aesthetics, and I do have a lot of memories here, especially because I was terrible at the game when I was younger, so I probably spent a lot of time here. Honorable mentions go to this spot in Raya Island, this one in Grand Metropolis, and the Chao Gardens, which are pretty close favorites. I think it's pretty intriguing how, when making a game, the devs will sometimes create an area without much thought being put into them, but then people who play the game might end up creating a sort of special bond with it, or having childhood memories about that place specifically. I guess that's the beauty of games really, that everyone will have unique memories about the most random stuff possible, and that we have a platform to share it and hopefully find someone that had a similar experience. And that's about it for this episode. I really can't think of more spots because I already covered every single one that I could think of, as well as basically every single suggestion. So I would seriously like to know some obscure or unusual areas that you like. They don't really have to be obscure, honestly. They can be just random areas that you have memories of, for example. Usual stuff here. I would really appreciate if you subscribe if you enjoy my content, as it does really help me out a ton. And consider activating notifications as well, since my videos usually take a month to come out. I have a Patreon where you can support me for quite cheap and get a few perks and whatnot, like early access to videos. I also have a Twitter if you want to follow me there, and check out my community tab once in a while as I post quite frequently there. And that's about it really. I'll hopefully see you soon.